Welcome into the instant reaction from the Georgia Bulldogs. Clean, old-fashioned, hate week rivalry win over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. You already know what time it is. Make sure you get in the comments wherever you're watching this reaction and video. Hit us on social media at NFL with AJL. Share wherever you may be watching. Hope y'all have been well. I know it's been a little bit since we've been on the show, but after that game tonight, you know I had to jump on here and give y'all the instant reaction. We'll also be talking a little bit about Lane Kiffin's decision coming at some point tomorrow. Hope y'all had a great Thanksgiving. Hope God has been good to you more than anything, because I know he has been good to me. Georgia just escaped with a victory over Georgia Tech in the hate week matchup down in Mercedes, really up in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, because I am here in Georgia. And this was a wild start to the football game. I mean, Georgia Tech muffs the kick and starts at the 2-yard line, so great field position for Georgia defensively. And then you have a missed intentional grounding call on Haynes King on like the third play of the game. And then a 3rd and long given up wide open over the middle for Georgia's defense. So we're already starting with a lot of commotion in this game. And coming into this one, I thought the game plan was very simple for Georgia. Limit Haynes King. He was second in the country in yards per game, passing and rushing. He was averaging 340 yards a game as an ACC quarterback leading Georgia Tech. So we had to control him. We saw last year in the 8 overtime victory, Haynes King was unstoppable. We've seen mobile quarterbacks be a struggle for Georgia season over season, and Haynes King has given everybody problems. And Georgia was able to hold Haynes King in check. No touchdowns given up to Georgia Tech. Now, yes, you would have liked to see more out of the Dawgs, but only 3 field goals that Georgia Tech was able to muster in this game. And you talk about holding Haynes King in check. When you take a look at his totals and his game logs, this was a bottom 3 game for him between passing yards and rushing yards. This was his first game of the season with no touchdowns accounted for. By far his worst statistical game of the year in the biggest moment. That's absolutely huge for Georgia's defense. Again, no touchdowns given up. Georgia's defense is now turning into the Georgia defense that we've seen season over season over season. With the Jalen Carters and the Keely Ringos and the Trayvon Walkers, we know the names that have littered those Georgia defenses really since the year 2020. And you can go even further back if you'd like. Georgia is hitting its stride at the right time. They have been cranking up the pressure the last few games, and it showed early in this game and really throughout the entirety of the game against that Georgia Tech offensive line, and specifically against Haynes King. Georgia had 8 sacks in its first 8 games. It was by far one of the worst in the country, one of the worst in the SEC. We were not used to seeing Georgia play like this. 9 sacks and counting. I don't have the sack total on the game right in front of me, but it was 9 sacks and counting within the last 4 games walking into this one against Georgia Tech. Now, I was starting to get a little concerned about Gunnar Stockton. He did have one of his worst statistical games of the year, maybe the worst game he's played as a Georgia starting quarterback. He's now got 3 interceptions in the last 2 games, and of course throughout the beginning of this game. So 3 interceptions in the last 3 games versus 2 picks in the first 9 games of the season. So we're going to keep an eye on that as we're looking at a potential SEC championship, as we're looking at the college football playoffs in the not too distant future. Defense thankfully saved the day again, holding Georgia Tech to just 3 after that brutal interception from Gunnar Stockton. But the first time, I know that every single time I get on here and I talk about my beloved Bulldogs, the name Zachariah Branch is always mentioned. And that's because whenever he touches the ball, we know that Georgia's offense is at its peak. The first time Zach Branch touched the ball in this game, it was almost a touchdown if he stays inside that block. The second time Zach Branch touched the ball in the game, it was a touchdown catch. I want to say the 3rd time Zach Branch touched the ball in the game, it was a catch at the 50-yard line to move the chains on 3rd down. I know we can't force it to him every game, and he is very heavily accounted for, but your offense at its peak runs through Zachariah Branch. And that's why I was ecstatic when he transferred to Georgia from USC last season, because I knew he was going to be special. And Mike Bobo is really utilizing him, probably not at the peak of his powers, because we know how Mike Bobo can be. And I'm going to get to his second half horrendous play calling here in just a second. But I love when Zach Branch is the focal point of this offense. I love when the pigskin is in between his fingers, ladies and gentlemen. I love it because the offense is undeniable. And Georgia had a clear game plan coming in. wear down Georgia Tech running the football, almost 200 yards rushing in this game, 70 yards passing, as we just mentioned. Georgia Tech's defense had been struggling big time coming into this game. So I'll also give a shout out to them. They only gave up 1 touchdown and 3 field goals. Previously, they had given up 41 points per game walking into this one against Georgia. And Georgia, thankfully, again, unrelenting pressure on Haynes King. 50+% of his dropbacks he was pressured on in this game. That is the Georgia defense you've been waiting to see. Over 5 yards a carry for Georgia in this one. Like, there was clearly a game plan. And yeah, a lot of people get on me about Gunnar Stockton. Oh, he's serviceable. He's mid. He's average at best. Go watch the tape. And let me also say this. Tell me you're not watching Georgia football without telling me you're not watching Georgia football. Will you offer me the Tennessee game when we ask Gunnar Stockton to win it with his arm? Will you offer me the Ole Miss game when we ask Gunnar Stockton to win it with his arm? Georgia has always been a run-first team. Defense is going to do a majority of the heavy lifting to keep the pressure off of all units. And then the passing game comes in. This was a bad passing day for Gunnar Stockton. I'll fully give you that. And his lone interception was absolutely horrible. No question about it. But the game plan was not to put the ball in Gunnar's hands. We were looking at Frazier. We were looking at, I don't believe I heard Chauncey Bowen's name called tonight. There was a couple of other running backs that were just absolute, and I know y'all are going to roast me in the comments. You're a Georgia fan. How don't you know? I just don't have their names off the top of my head. But I know that that game plan was to put the ball into Georgia running backs' hands, and that's exactly what they did. Georgia Tech was held to a season-low points, season-low yards, and season-low rushing yards in the first half. And if I had to dig a little deeper on that, it was probably a season low across the board, considering how their quarterback was held in check. Georgia held the ball for 35 minutes in this game. Dominated time of possession. Now, you want to see more than just a 7-point win, but it's hate week. It is rivalry week. It is the Atlanta Gridiron, not that. It is the clean, old-fashioned hate. So you're going to take this win any way you can because Georgia Tech has been scrappy all season. And I thought the line for Georgia being favored by 13.5 was laughable. Like, okay, Vegas is trying to get people to bite here, clearly. A lot of money was probably lost on Georgia today if you bet that line. But we've also seen Georgia Tech struggle to NC State, struggle to Boston College, struggle to Pitt. The last 3 weeks, and really now the last 4 weeks, Georgia Tech struggled across the board, but they held it in check in one of their biggest games of the season. Now, yes, they lost, but you just held that Georgia Bulldogs team, who was coming off a 35-point performance over Texas at home, to 16 points. Now, the second half was very, very forgettable for Georgia. I mean, Mike Bobo's play calling just absolutely dried up. Credit to Georgia Tech. They were on top of everything in the second half. I mean, we could not get a solid runoff. Yes, we started chipping away towards the end when we made them burn their timeouts, which was great because that was part of the game plan to just run the clock out, get a first down, stay in bounds, and win this tough-fought ball game. But the play calling in the second half was horrible. I was really floored by the no PI/holding call on Georgia's 3-and-out to open up the second half. I mean, he's literally tugging all over his shoulder pad, his jersey. Like, what more do you need to see from that? But my boy, Ellis Robinson IV, number 1 on the defense. He has improved himself game after game these last 8-9 weeks, these last 6-7 weeks. If y'all are looking for the reference, I remember when he was getting burnt versus Brazil in the Tennessee game. Then he has a major interception on Georgia Tech's probably best offensive drive of the day to be able to go and just stall it right there. Or excuse me, the best offensive drive they had of the second half, and thinking back on it now, their best offensive drive of the day. I mean, that was a pick inside the 5-yard line. He now leads the SEC in interceptions with 4, and he ended up evening up the turnover battle for Georgia because we saw Gunnar throw that horrible one early on. And this game was just a massive battle of 2 really good coaches who respect the hell out of each other. Kirby Smart's arguably the best coach in college football. We know what Brent Key's been doing over in Georgia Tech, and we know how he's a disciple of a great coaching tree. And these were just 2 guys, I think, who really respected what each of them brought to the table. Brent Key knew that Georgia was going to play physical, and Kirby Smart knew that Georgia Tech was going to be fast, which they were. They were going to be scrappy, which they were. And it literally came down to 1 second with a Hail Mary to determine if we were going to go to overtime. Just like it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 overtimes last year to decide a winner in this game. Georgia down 17-0. Georgia down 20-6, I believe, with like 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Ended up winning 44-42 in octuple overtime. These are the type of standards, storylines that hold up in this type of football game against Georgia and Georgia Tech. But again, Bobo's play calling, I mean, it dried up in the third quarter and dried up in the fourth quarter, and it was bad, right? Like just 40 yards passing for Gunnar Stockton heading into the fourth quarter. He had 30 total passing yards in the fourth, so I guess you could say improvement, but again, the game plan was to not have the ball in Gunnar Stockton's hands. And Georgia Tech's defense was just sniffing out everything all second half. I mean, I'll give credit to them, but Georgia was also killing themselves in this game as well with penalties in the second half. They had no penalties in the first half. They had 5 penalties for 45 yards in the second half. Back-to-back penalties between the late hit on Haynes King, which I thought was ticky-tack at first, but it ended up being right. And then the garbage pass interference call that was called on Georgia in this game at the end of the fourth quarter. It was about 4 or 5 minutes to go in the game. The missed call at the beginning of the third quarter that I just told you about before the Ellis Robinson interception was more blatant than this one. And I get it. The receiver fell over. You saw the defender's hands kind of like moving forward with him, but he wasn't tugging on him. He wasn't pulling on him. He wasn't wrapping around him at all. But it was bad optics, so they had to throw the flag, which I guess I get it. It's a bad call. I thought the one at the beginning of the third quarter was more obvious, more egregious, if you will. But Georgia wasn't good in the second half by any stretch of the imagination. But these are the types of games that they are built for. These are the types of games that Kirby Smart coaches to an elite level for. This is why Georgia has the most wins against top 25 opponents in the country. This is why Georgia is 9-0, 10-0, whatever the stat is, under Kirby Smart against top, I think it is 10 or top 15 teams. Like, Kirby Smart coaches for these hard-fought, close game moments, and he's been doing it for damn near a decade in the red and black over in Athens in Sanford Stadium. And these are the glory days for Georgia. Like, you're not too far off back-to-back national championships. Kirby finally got over the hump. He's one of the best recruiters. We're pulling in recruits left and right. Don't let any of that be forgotten about Kirby Smart. And Georgia fans need to realize that we are sitting in the golden days of this franchise currently, post the 21st century. But again, the second half was bad. It's almost like Georgia played this game backwards. Usually they play a bad first half, great second half. They played a great first half, and they played a bad second half. It was bad play calling. It was penalties that nearly killed the game. You were bad on third down. It was the fewest passing yards in a Georgia game since 2019 with 70. But you still came away with the win. Do I want Georgia to play in the SEC championship for bragging rights? Hell yeah, because I'd love to hold up that SEC trophy and put another one in the trophy case in Kirby Smart's tenure. But it's a double-edged sword because you play the SEC championship, you win, you're probably going to get a bye. You lose, you run that risk of getting shuffled around in the rankings to where you might not get that first-round bye. Or if you don't play, you're going to have to play in the first round, but you'll rest on championship weekend. So it's like, which one do you want to go after? I'm not really sure. I guess if I'm gonna, since we're already highly ranked, if I'm already going to get a bye week anyways, I guess I'd rather play a lesser opponent in the first actual round at home, hopefully. Well, I mean, no, because they're not putting in the 4 highest ranked conference champions. It's just you have to be ranked within the top 12 to get there. I don't know, y'all. It's very interesting. It's like I'd rather play an easier first round game. But then, if we're playing in the first round, very good chance it will be at home, which I think we will be considering the rankings. And you'll play a lesser team that's hopefully not an SEC, powerhouse. Or if you go and play in the SEC championship, which will be either Texas A&M, I think Georgia can play Alabama in the SEC championship, I think. Or, if you're going to play Ole Miss. So it's like, it's really pick your poison. I'd probably rather take the first of the scenarios and play at home in the first round, get a bye week on championship weekend, then have 4 straight weeks to play. Now, you'll have to win 4 games in order to be a national champion versus you get the first round bye You'll have to win 3 games. We saw all first-round byes last year get swept out of, get swept out of the college football playoffs. Let me know what you think of the instant reaction to Georgia and Georgia Tech, as I'm now going to jump into the Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin sweepstakes. Is it the end of an era? The Lane Kiffin saga switching around? Is he going to literally leave in the middle of the night like he did with Tennessee to go to USC, quote, the only one job he would leave for? I'll tell you right now, Ole Miss fans, college football fans, Lane Kiffin is not returning to Ole Miss. He's not. And it's not because of the $90 million offer that LSU is preparing for him. It's because if Lane Kiffin was so devoted to the University of Mississippi, if he was 100% sure that he would not be leaving Ole Miss, why would they be waiting until after the Egg Bowl to announce it? If you already know, why not come out, put the AD, put the fan base at rest? Like you're literally building the greatest season in Ole Miss history since 1962, which is when you last won a national champion. This is the first ever 11-win regular season record for Ole Miss, and 2 total 11-win seasons dating back to 2023. Of course, one of those coming in a bowl game win, if I'm not mistaken. You're in the middle of the greatest regular season in school history. You just dominated Mississippi State on rivalry weekend. Say that 3 times fast. And you have a legit chance for the one and only college football playoff berth at Ole Miss. But your mind's not made up yet. And I get it. Penn State's available. LSU is available. Florida's available. But do you want to look like another Urban Meyer just jumping ship? Do you want to look like another Brian Kelly just jumping ship? Do you want to recreate your moment of leaving Tennessee overnight? Like how, and with the recruiting classes you've been able to bring in, I mean, look at Trinidad Chambliss stepping up in the midst of your quarterback being injured. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss was able to really engineer Ole Miss to a top offense this season. But that's not enough for Ole Miss to decide to, or for Lane Kiffin to decide to want to stay. The decision will come after rivalry weekend. And he's going to give Pete Carroll a call. He's going to give Nick Saban a call and talk to them because he just wants advice on how to make his decision. And I'm always a proponent of chase bigger things in your life. Chase the things that will make you better, that will benefit your family, that will potentially change your legacy, because choices are not made in a vacuum. Make the decision that positively impacts your life the most. And because 2 things can be true at once, you need to finish what you started, Lane Kiffin. You need to finish what you started. Because Lane Kiffin, as we sit here and talk about him, he's never been an SEC champion. He's 500 in bowl games. He's never made the CFP. Clearly, he's never won a natty. He's never been to a national championship. What is Lane Kiffin's signature win on the big stage? Be able to correct some of those things that I'm sitting here talking about, Lane. And we've seen this guy flip-flop jobs back and forth. I don't know. If I'm an Ole Miss fan, I'm pretty pissed about this, because the fact that this is even a story shows the distraction while this great season for Ole Miss is still unfolding. I mean, you're in the middle of a great season. To even have this be a talking point while the season is happening, why can't you say you'll give us a decision in February, a month after you're able to digest who the national champion is, which I don't think it's going to be Ole Miss, but for Lane Kiffin's sake, it could be you, Lane. It very well could be you. You could be on the edge of your first ever CFP berth, coming out of the greatest regular season for Ole Miss. But nope, we're going to talk about it right in the middle of the season. Right after rivalry, y'all are going to crush you for it. Rivalry weekend. Because you could still possibly play an SEC chip. What if that news comes out and now your locker room feels unplugged because you've already made a commitment to leave them in the middle of the greatest regular season of all time in Ole Miss history. You know what this reminds me of? Let's look at the NFL side of things for a second. Y'all remember when the Patriots fired, who was it? Gerard Mayo, and Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator for the Lions. And everybody knew that Ben Johnson was either going to go to the Patriots or he was going to be the Chicago Bears head coach. And the Lions got obliterated by the Commanders in the divisional round. And everybody said Ben Johnson was checked out. I'm not saying it's apples to apples, but it's the same concept of job openings, opportunity to be a head coach, opportunity to go to a bigger program. In the NFL, it's for being a head coach. In college football, it's just, hey, how big of a program can you get to? And I don't want that to be the same thing for Lane Kiffin and these fans. Because what happens if Lane commits and says, yeah, I'm going to go be an LSU Tiger, and then Ole Miss gets smacked 35-7 in the first round? Or like if they just lose, right? I think I'm not one to place so much into the media like, oh, this is being said and that's being said. Like, yes, obviously that's part of the nuances of the show here. But just for this, again, to be a talking point while the season's happening, it's disheartening to know that the integrity of these games with these coaches are kind of questioned in times like this. And maybe not the integrity of the game, but when you think about the integrity of college football and the character as a whole, it doesn't sit well. And I don't have a dog in the fight, literally. But if, like the opportunity to chase a bigger program in college football when you have built something up in Ole Miss. I mean, y'all realize they had a New Year's Six bowl win since the Eli Manning days. Eli Manning's been retired from the NFL for like 7 years, 6 years, 6, 7 years. It's so funny how that like something becomes a meme or like a saying, and it flows through all facets of life. But y'all get in the comments. Let me know what you think about Lane Kiffin not going to be an Ole Miss Rebel. I don't believe he will be. Let me know your thoughts on Georgia escaping Georgia Tech in the newest edition of the Clean Old Fashioned Hate. I love y'all. I need y'all. And I will see y'all in the next one.